Grand to the rising, Elizabeth. We're so happy to be here on this Friday, which is March the 15th, 2024. And this is the Grand Rising Show, Purpose and Passion. So we have been talking right before this. We were talking about the conference that's coming up, which is May the 4th, 2024. And we have just a little over a month and a half to put it all together. And really, we are doing a wonderful job. Excited about all the vendors. We only have 5 more spots to fill. So if you have a friend that wants to vend, they need to get it in right now. Get in right now. We have on there that it's 65 until
March 31st.
March, 31st. But I believe within this week that it's going to be gone anyway. It's going to be closed, which is wonderful. And then, we're in the midst of making the flyers for the vendors so that they can promote themselves at the conference. My lovely, 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 beautiful Lolly is my co-host, and she's got something special for us that I think we need to jump right on in so that we have the time. Go ahead, babe.
Yes, indeed. So, Grand Rising, everyone.
Hello, sweetie.
Grand Rising.
Oh, let me tell one more thing, Lolly, that we will not be having meetings on Friday early about the conference because we're pretty solid with that. All we need to do now is on Thursdays with creativity, we will talk about whatever details we need to do at the beginning of the show and then go into the rest of the show on Thursdays. All right. So, yes, Lolly.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I'm excited for everything we're gearing up for. So last week I showed a preview of a show on Netflix. Hopefully we're able to get it on here. I'm gonna share my screen shortly. But it was called In Our Mother's Gardens, and it just spoke on the relationships that we have historically with our mothers and how different they can be, how important they still are, no matter how unique they are. And so I'm sure you can identify yourself in someone's story or pieces of everyone's story that shares in this documentary. But it just speaks volumes about our culture. And so with that being said, I won't talk too much. Let me see if I can share this. Oh, we're not started yet. Okay. All right, it's about an hour and 20 minutes, so we won't be able to watch the full thing, but let's just see what we get through today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Can everyone see?
Yes. And then you can put the link in the chat for us who want to watch the rest of it.
Okay. I will do that probably after right here.
Isn't it the name of Alice Walker's book too, In My Mother's Garden?
It might be. I don't know, actually. I should look into that. All right, here we go, ladies.
Can you blow it all the way up?
Yep, it is. That was Alice Walker's name.
And I'm telling you the truth, doesn't me? Johnny, that was hard. But thank God the Lord brought us out of this. You're doing a whole lot better now than what you're doing then. And I thank God. Kill them now. Don't know what them times is. And then they ain't satisfied. That was the good time they got.
Teresa Thames, stay one mark. Chantel Lewis, stay one mark.
And take one deep breath in. Exhale. Exhale. You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the women in my family were take no stuff kind of women, but they also knew how to hold a family together.
My people are from Biloxi, Mississippi. They're school teachers, manual workers, manual laborers, and it's a safe community, it's home, but they did not migrate north.
My family is from Louisiana, from the northern part, up near the Mississippi Delta, a small, semi-rural town. My folks have lived in that part of Louisiana since the earliest censuses that Black people had names.
My people are from Louisville, Kentucky. I am the first generation starting in California. My grandmother moved with her husband. He's a military man in Fort Knox Air Force Base, which is not far from Louisville, Kentucky. My grandmother moved to Sacramento, California when my grandfather retired. So during the summers, I went to Sacramento. In fact, my grandmother's favorite story is to tell me that she got a collect call from me when I was about 5. And I said, Granny, can you come get me?
I'm from New Orleans, and I am my mother's child, more so my grandmother's child, my grandmother being Gladys, who we call Grandma. It'd be like, Grandma, oh, Grandma, right? Gladys was an only child who grew up in New Orleans, particularly in a place called Algiers. Algiers was known as Hoodoo Town. Louisa Tesh talks about it in her book Jambalaya because it's the oldest site of hoodoo in New Orleans. It was there that enslaved Africans disembarked those ships, taking okra seeds and rice seeds out of their hair. And that's where my people from, my mama's people, across that water, Algiers, New Orleans, Louisiana.
And I like to say that I'm my family's great migrator. Everybody else still live in the boot or they live in driving distance, and I'm the one person who went far and left home.
I'm 3 generations in the Bronx. My grandmother's people are from South Carolina. My great-grandmother's buried there, my great-great-grandmother is buried there, and my great-great-grandfather, both of them were enslaved. And so our family plot is there.
My family is from Virginia, from most of the East Coast, also Cherokee Nation. I mean, obviously from the continent, the motherland.
I would love for you all to tell me where you're from.
I am from many places. I am from Brooklyn, New York. That's where I was born and raised, but I'm also from Sierra Leone, West Africa, because that's where my father was born and raised. And I'm also from Equatorial Guinea, because that's where my mother was born, but she was raised in Freetown. So growing up in my house, I was raised around Creole culture and Mende culture, so that's what I'm used to. So I think about Brooklyn and I think about Sierra Leone.
My father is originally from Cuba. They are Cubanos. He migrated to Sierra Leone in West Africa.
What languages were y'all speaking at home?
They talk Creole. You say you sabi Creole. You get for talk some Creole with me today. Let me interview you now. How you did they go for you today? Miss Chantal.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about growing up in Freetown.
Life wasn't too bad because I was just a little rascal and raised by the village. If you do something wrong and a neighbor sees you, they could, scold you or smack you or do something to you. And you wouldn't even dare go home and tell mom what happened because you get a second beating, So everybody raised you.
She brought that mentality to Brooklyn. And I think it even caused some conflicts with other parents in the building.
Because I smacked somebody's child.
Lineage tradition, right, is very important. When I was traveling to South Africa for the first time, I was going away for 3 months. And my mom said to me, you have to pull Sarah before you go on this trip. And I'm like, what is that? And she goes, it's like a longer form of libation for the ancestors. And she gave me a whole list of things to do before I left, because she was like, when you're going on this long trip, you need the ancestors to open the way for you. Make sure that nothing comes in your way and that you have a good and safe trip. And those are the things that she instilled in me. So I think I have like this just innate part of me that just says, pour libation, you know, do the things, give respect, be thankful, be grateful, know where you came from. And literally, when I was in South Africa, if I tell you how magical that trip was, and you know, we never know, right? Was it this? I think it was. Like, I could feel it. There were moments where I was like, wow. Even with the loss of my father, what consoled me is the fact that I could still be in communication with him. You know, and those are the things that I learned, those are the values that I learned from my mom, the tradition. I think it's important. It's the way that we survive, the way that we live.
I always pull Sarah for her whenever she's going on a trip.
In my home, things were done a certain way. And then as soon as I went outside, like I would go to my friend's house. And that's how I learned really about like African-American culture, Caribbean culture through my friends, especially growing up in Brooklyn. I grew up in a multicultural place. My building alone had people from the South. For a long time, I thought down South was a place because in the summertime, all my friends were going down South. I was like, where's down South? I want to go down South. I remember tasting grits for the first time and trying to sneak some sugar in it and some butter because I was like, this is Gary. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so it was interesting just learning different cultures, but having my culture at home.
I could cook anything. I love to cook jollof rice, cassava leaves. This is very traditional cassava leaves with some rice. You know, I cook rice and peas and some pig's feet. I'm not sure. Some pork. In fact, when I was working for the Open Society Institute, the Soros Foundation, before I retired, I used to prepare like chicken cutlets, which is one of my favorite dish, and I would bring it to the office. If they're having a birthday party or whatever party, they would ask me to prepare food. The jollof rice, oh, they love it.
Do you think that Sierra Leone jollof is better than Nigerian jollof?
Of course, definitely. There's no comparison. Are you kidding me? Well, I will invite you over to bring whoever you want, and you try both jollof and see which one is the best. I'll let you be the judge.
My grandmother is 5'2", and she is fiery. She caught me on TV once, and she said, I mean, you look beautiful, but you know, you could have put on some lipstick. She has all the best advice and all the best recipes, and she is all
Love teaching. After school, there would be graham crackers and milk and Highlight magazine.
But I always describe my grandmother as she's not the milk and cookies kind.
My grandmother being Gladys. You know, Miss Gladys, as people call her, was a drinking woman. Gladys was a smoking woman. Gladys went to church, talked and ran her mouth on the phone like all day, every day. I remember growing up, she was like, stop running in and out of my door. Like, y'all gonna pay the air condition? Y'all don't live in no barn. You ain't gonna go to your mama's house with all that. You know, she'd be arguing with my grandpa. He'd be calling her, Gladys, Gladys. What, Joe? Every time I sit down and rest my nerves, here you go come talking about bring you some insure, bring you some damn insure, right? That's Gladys.
My grandmother is Charlesteen. Her mother is Ruth. And my grandmother tells me stories of Ruth not being pushed to the back of the bus. And Ruth was a very small woman, but a very powerful woman. Ruth wielded a knife at all times because she was 4'9". She didn't play any games.
People talk about, in context, the Burke women, right? So the Burke women are characters. The joke amongst the grandchildren is to try to get grandma to say, I love you. So when you're on the phone, you be like, all right, grandma, bye. All right, love you. She's like, okay, then take care. She hang up the phone. But she will, you know, make you a blanket. I don't know how to describe my grandmother besides about it. Like, she's so about it, almost to the point where you have to be like, Grandma, like, let me tell you a story. When I was in I want to say 4th grade, this Jamaican man was in the supermarket, and I was in the supermarket racing down the aisle with my friend on the shopping cart like kids do. I bumped into his cart, and he turns around, and I said something smart to him, like, don't talk to me that way, whatever I said, I don't remember, and he smacked me in my face. So I run home. My grandmother was there. We get back to the supermarket. They pull him inside the store. He happens to know security guards in the store. My grandmother looks around, picks up a pipe, hauls back, and busts the window out in the supermarket. This is a legendary story in my family, mind you. She ain't even scared. She was like, I need you to understand something. You don't put your motherfucking hands on my child. Lecturing and arguing and yelling at the open window. That's Willie Mae Burke.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you,
My family is from Louisiana, from the northern part. It's literally listed as a village, not even as a town, and it's known as Choudrent, Louisiana. Most of the folks who live a mile up the road are people who are kin to me. So I come from a deeply rooted sense of connection to family, to soil, literally red clay dirt. My grandmother dug her hands in that soil. I will never forget, in 1999, I came home from Howard University, where I went to college, to see my grandmother. I would always come get her in my car and take her riding. So we're riding through town, and they had just built the fire station, and she looks at me, calls me by my family nickname, which is Bricky. She says, Brick, we just got a fire station. Children is coming on up. On her porch in her yard, she was gonna take good care of you, but you better not come starting no mess. And if you were gonna have a problem, and that problem was probably gonna start at the tip of her rifle, which she kept in the door jamb, waiting on anybody who tried it. The KKK were big in those parts, and my grandmama would tell me frequently, the laws try to come down here and tell me whether I can have my guns, and I go on and pull my gun out and tell them to get off my property. And so those are my folks. Don't mess with them. They don't mess with anybody, and you better not mess with them.
Black Moses Bobby. Oh no, I think we're lost. We'll never be free.
Hey kids, looking for freedom?
It's Harriet Tubman.
On the other side of this tree, you'll find a cave. Go through the cave, make a quick left, and you'll see a boat.
Okay.
Inside of that boat, you'll see a pair of oars. Freedom oars.
Wow.
Paddle north and make your way to freedom.
Runaway Christy?
Yeah, Runaway Ken?
This is all kind of scary.
Freedom, true freedom, is daunting.
I know Runaway Ken, but
You have come this far, but you have to know you're ready.
you know she's been known to hold a gun on folks who hesitate.
I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger.
Black Moses Barbie comes complete with motivational freedom rifle. Freedom or sold separately.
I was born in Barrio, East Harlem, and my parents came in from Puerto Rico looking for a better life, a better promise. My parents came in the late 20s and early 30s. Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States, a democracy, right? So-called democracy has colonies. And they came looking for opportunity, like most people who migrate and immigrate. My parents met here. They didn't meet in Puerto Rico. My mother was from Caguas, and my father was from Loíza. So they met here, and according to my dad, he saw my mother's legs and fell in love. My abuela was very interesting because she was a spiritist, dressed in white all the time, wore a white scarf and then 2 long braids. She was also the matriarch of the family and guided our family a lot through her spiritual knowledge, her intelligence, because she communicated with spirit. We were a very tight family, lived in the same building. We were very close and the doors were open. My abuela's home, my grandmother's home,
was very warm because she was always cooking. So the home was very warm. So whether there was steam or no steam in the tenement, her apartment was always warm. She had a room that was the altar room. So that room had Catholic saints as well as African sculptures, flowers all the time, and you could smell tuberoses, azucena all the time, and candles burning. So that her house or her apartment, I would say, like now people say installations. Her whole apartment was an installation. Beautiful material that sparkled, so that it was a joy going into her apartment. My grandmother was born in Puerto Rico. She was the daughter of probably someone who came right out of enslavement. But we know that it doesn't end, right? It continues because of oppression. Maria de la O is my great-grandmother. And there were 9 Maria de la O's that come from Central Africa into Puerto Rico. So one of those 9 was my great-grandmother and her mother. She followed the traditions that I assume her mother passed on. So she had the knowledge and the intelligence to communicate with spirit. She was able to heal because she knew plants. And so she was the healer of the building. People needed advice, they would go to my grandmother. So that there was always people in the house and she was always helping people. I was the youngest. I don't want to say the favorite because she was like wonderful for all of us, but I was the youngest, so she would, cover me.
My mother wore bangles up her arm my whole childhood. And it was such a big deal, right? Because as a kid, this was a sign and mommy was coming. You heard them slippers and you heard them bangles and you were like, oh God, did I wash the dishes? Like, did I take the meat out of the defrost? Your life, my heart I could hear her at the door.
My middle name is Patrice, named after my mom, Patricia Calvin Scott. My mama is a firecracker. My daddy likes to tell these stories about how my mama was when they got married. Like, girl, your mama used to do this. And then I ask her, she's like, girl, that sounds so crazy. Like, I wouldn't even do nothing like that. And I'd be looking at her with the sideline like, oh, okay. She was fierce about her independence. My mom was educated. I'm a 4th-generation college graduate. She was a social worker. She had a master's degree from Tulane. She always had her own. Like, she had her own money. She had a sock drawer. She'd be like, go get that out of my drawer, right? And it always taught me, like, no matter what, even if you're married, you need to have something, for yourself.
My mother is amazing. First of all, people always think we're sisters. She relishes in that as an Aries, of course. Oh, did you hear? Like, someone said that I look like your age, She's always, like, trying to, like, pop off about, like, the age difference. She's really great at giving advice, and she's kind of a seer. And she hasn't really tapped into this power that she has in a way where she's been able to use it in an impactful way, but she's really aware of it and cultivates it and engages with it.
My mom can sing. My mom can sing like nobody's business. Going to any church service, it was like, get Gwen to sing. Just this whisper through the church, get Gwen to sing. Also, my mom struggled with drug addiction. She was addicted to crack cocaine almost my entire life until I went to college. I was raised by my grandmother who lived right across town around the corner. My mother and I, we have a strained relationship now, but we love each other fiercely. And I'm reminded that she is who she is, and because of who she is, I am who I am. The good, the bad, and the ugly of that.
And that, like, generational trauma that you talk about between mothers and daughters, how did that show up in your family?
I think one of the biggest tragedies in my family was that my grandmother lost her mother with her 2 kids on Christmas Eve in a fire. My grandmother, Charles Steen, was 19. My grandfather was away. He was a music man, so he was off in Detroit doing music things. And the Christmas tree caught on fire. And her mother and her 2 babies, I think they were 2 and 3 at the time, her mother said, go ahead, I got the kids. And they never came out. So she experienced trying to get them out. Her arms, her body was burned. She stayed in the hospital for almost 6 months. And that kind of set off how my grandmother raised the rest of us going forward. We're very strong and very independent. That's the focus. And I believe it's because at 19, she had to be completely independent. My mother's the closest to my grandmother, and yet they seem the most opposite and the most the same. My mother carries a lot of pain from my grandmother trying to, make her proud. I think that's what we all subscribe to do, is to make her proud.
I think that I know my mama well, but she's a loner. She's very private. My mama was the rebel. She's the baby of the family. When my mother was 18, a man that she was dating shot her 3 times and tried to kill her. He was a man that she had formerly dated, and he shot her, and he shot the man she was currently dating. And weeks after that, she survived the shooting at 18, and then she found out that she was pregnant with me. And so we all survived the shooting, my mother, my father, and me. And what I love about my mom, and one of the reasons I find her so fascinating, is she only told me the bare basics of that story when I was 13 years old. And over the years, I had to put the rest of the story together. And so she has this clear ethical sense that she didn't want me to be saddled with her baggage. So she didn't tell me the story of her pregnancy with me or my birth, or that we had survived this harrowing experience. Even at 37, I'm still learning my mama's story and how she overcame so many of the things she overcame.
The most important and pivotal time in our lives is when we're born and when we pass, right? And so my mom was able to be there, as I am as a doula, in service of my grandmother who had passed. All of her descendants, from my mother, my aunt, the granddaughters, and the great-granddaughters, were in the room. And she had on a blue caftan and a head wrap on, and she looked so regal, so beautiful. And then my mom knew it was really soon, and so she turned all the lights down. It was just candlelight, and it was dark. Everybody had their hands on my grandmother. My mother's strength and her softness in swaddling my grandmother with that kind of love in her last moments of life was so tender to see. And in her last breath that she took, my mother kissed her, and she felt her leave her body. And she was looking at my mother in the time of her last breath, which was also her firstborn, So it was like a beautiful life cycle to see unfold. I feel like my mother intuited what to pull down from spirit when my grandmother was passing. It was like in an innate response to the moment, and also to this unique tether that she has to her mother. I believe in that moment, my mother just had a knowing. That connection that she kept with her mom up until that very moment, I think gave her this access and opening that allowed spirit to move through her and order her steps and guide her to creating that space that would allow my grandmother to feel at ease, to let go. And if everything could happen in that beautiful way, that you're able to embrace the woman who brought you into this world and make her feel comfortable enough and safe to leave, I would hope for that my mom and I could have it that special way as well.
So I'm gonna put my
Oh, you put your eyebrows on?
Yes, indeed. Where is my eyebrow pencil? So my aunt was 94 when she died, and she was still putting on her eyebrow pencil. She used to be the stylist for Dorothy Dandridge in L.A. She was a millionaire. She was a Link. She was a member of the Lynx. She was part of that big boule. She had a black dress shop for the elite in Baldwin Hills in L.A. There was a lot of elite black people. They lived in those neighborhoods of Leimert Park, View Park.
and they were the wives of doctors and lawyers. And because we had segregation, they didn't go downtown shopping with white folk. So they shop with black folk. They only shop with black folk. Like shop black, hello.
Hello.
So they only shop black. And then my aunt had concierge. The lady say, "Hi, this is Dr. and Mrs. Honeycutt. I'm having a cocktail party over at my house for a few people. Could you send Thaddeus over?" And my cousin Thaddeus would go there with 12 outfits for her to try on with all her shoes and jewelry in the comfort of her house. And she would say, "I'll take these two, put it on my account." My husband will square it at the end of the month. So this was high end. She was a millionaire. And we was poor in Compton. So my grandmama said, "You play with your hair too much, it'll abandon you when you get older." And sure enough, it had ran away.
You still got a lot of hair on your head.
Oh, give thanks. Yeah, but I come from vain women from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Tell me about your jewelry.
Okay, so these are not accessories. These are necessaries. Everything that I make, I kind of channel what kind of energy that I want to represent me and express me. So I pretty much like to wear my own things, even if they're a knockoff of a traditional style like the doifé, the comb that the Akan people use to sign the idea, the proverb of femininity and women's beauty. And it's functional too. You could fork your hair out if it's a certain kind of way. This is a mask of a spiritual organization out of the Congo. I'm drawn to certain things. And then once I pursue them and I find out that the meaning, even though they may look on the surface to be different symbols, they are all coming out of that upright human being. The Kananga, as above, so below. So this is black people's own Star of David. Ain't nobody got to take shit from white folk. If I could just say one thing in the whole world, don't nobody look for them to be an exemplar of anything but insanity. So if you want to be the master insane person on the world that loses regard for all humanity, join that group. So this is our people's stuff, upholding stuff, rooted to the earth. The roots of the tree are as deep and tall, should be as tall as the part that you see above the ground, to be rooted deep. When I was born, my mother gave me the name Renee. Renee is the past participle of the verb renaître, and renaître means to be reborn. So I was given an ancestral name. When they saw me, they say reborn, had been here before. So this Khepera is the Egyptian symbol of coming again, eternal rebirth. I tend towards things that represent me. So it's never fashionable in that sense. Like, oh, I'm creating a new trend. This is trending this way. But it's always what I need at the moment. If I want to remind myself that life continues forever, then I'll wear these talismans like this. But to answer your question, there's a story about how these Muslims, and this is a true story, 1981, how these Muslims all came from the mosque in Monrovia, Liberia, and marched down to the jewelry store where I was apprenticing with a master jeweler, 12-generation jeweler from Mali, the Sissoko family. The old man said he would teach me how to make jewelry. In his culture, women didn't touch metal because it was alchemy, it was magic, and it was only preserved for blacksmiths and men. But he would teach me. I started like the guy in Coming to America on lettuce, and then I advanced up. And then when they got tired of hearing about there's a lady in there making jewelry, all of the El Hajis came down from the mosque and shut me down. So that's how I end up just being like a shopkeeper girl working in the shop showing people jewelry or decorating the shop for them. I always wanted to be a jeweler. I found out that one of my relatives on the plantation was a blacksmith. That was his job. So it came from a natural tendency to want to work with metals. Oh, these are the ones that I made when Trump got elected. I was living in Dakar in 2016. This is Uncle Ben, a call to war in the Akan system, an Adinkra symbol. So like when things happen in the world, Trump get elected, walk around with something like this. Who won it? Bring some, get more. So that's what jewelry is.
Come
Jewelry,
on. I love
jewelry is
black
shields and
people.
amulets.
You bring some?
This one
Oh,
right
you
here,
about
I
to get
designed
more.
this and slapped the
I
shit
love
out
black
of somebody.
people. Come bring some shit to me. You go get more shit than you brought. That's what that means.
I usually travel
Oh, you know
alone
about it.
in a world where men
I act like you
do
don't know
all
what that
kinds of
means.
like rape
Why you
culture.
be trying to joke me? Why you joke?
I always want to look like that dangerous girl. You was gonna do this, but then you said, what's that, lecture company, Sesame Street? One of these things is not like the other.
But one of these things just doesn't belong here, and now it's time to play our game.
Look at all of the signs and go about your business. Okay, I gotta say this. I have not ever, any time in any of my life, seen either of my grandmothers in church. So you know how most black people who ain't from New Orleans, they got that praying grandmother, and they got that cookie baking grandmama, and they got that other grandmama? Not me. One bet horses and one had 11 husbands. Man is like a bus. Miss one, catch the next. Those are words of wisdom from my grandmother. By the time we was performing, my grandmother would have been liquored up. And when we go to do the ancestors, I'll show you her. That's why she couldn't take her liquor. They was from the reservation. And my grandmother would be doing a Native American chant in her bra and panties. And we used to say, wow, isn't she wonderful? And my mother used to be so ashamed. Because she would be, she would just be feeling it, and she just would be in another language. She used to go down to Mexico every other weekend to the bullfight. She loved bullfights. That's the women I come from, horse betting and passionate women who knew spiritual things. Let me see what kind of card they got for you. Oh, yes. Shango loves you. 6 of hearts. Yes, indeed. Yeah, so that's my jewelry. That's my makeup. I come from glamorous, beautiful women, strong women, cussing women. Women that have proverbs in their mouths. Well, I don't want to get on a rant and a rave, but the axe forgets, the tree remembers. You can't have a short memory and be black. You open yourself up for attack. You got to have a long memory because you're singing a long song. Y'all feel me? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do. So that's the thing about jewelry. It's amulet. It's protective on your vital points of your body. It's protective with its symbols. And it's also deflective.
Miss Iris Jean Sewell. And my mother has had the same Grace Jones spiky haircut for probably like 30 years. She gets recognized easily for, and people sometimes think she's famous. And I think part of it is because she thinks she's famous, to be honest. And she's always been fly. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, Hyde Park, South Side. My parents actually met in Ohio, and they decided to move to Chicago. There's a lot of historic Black wealth in Chicago. I think that was the term buppy was coming around, which was Black yuppie. So there was a lot of sort of what I considered to be a little bit of bougie practices, like your Jack and Jills, your Lynx. My mother wasn't really with it. And my mother is someone who came from a family where my grandfather was a, war veteran who became a cab driver and a janitor because there were 6 kids. And my dad was educated and his family was very educated for him to be that age. Her perspective is that wealth is a pathway to access. And I feel like that is unique to be a Black woman, to not feel like your Blackness or your womanness is going to be obstructing you from what you want. She just felt like from what she has absorbed growing up in Ohio, it was money that was sort of the barrier. I was just recently rereading Song of Solomon, and in it, Toni Morrison talks a lot about sort of growing up in Ohio and kind of not feeling limited by certain things and moving through life as if there aren't limitations around you, there's just limitations within you. And that reminds me of just how the women in my family have always moved. They're just kind of like unfazed by the word no. When it comes to sort of womanhood and relationships, like, with men, I've also seen all of them be in loving relationships with men. Like, all of my aunts have loving husbands. I joke with my dad sometimes that, like, the standard is so high, I expect to be treated a certain way based on the way that I see him treat my mother. Also, it's rooted in my faith, you know what I'm saying? I grew up in the church. My grandmother is a praying, hardcore, loves her Jesus woman, but also a hot mess in terms of comedy. So it's not like this like strict Christianity. I grew up in a Black liberation theology church where people were cursing from the pulpits, but it was very much like in the name of Jesus, though. Jesus was a liberator. He was an activist. My mother definitely decided she wasn't going to do winters anymore. And because she's a consultant and has her own business, she decided that she's going to spend every March, which is her birthday month, in Miami. And so when I asked her, oh, is Daddy coming? Because, they're fully together. She was like, he's welcome to come. That's how she rolls, right? And so I think my independence is like very much, if someone doesn't want to do what I want to do, that's cool. I will see you when I get back. Like, I'm all for my friends. I love them. But I also love me time, which is something I've definitely learned from Iris Sewell. Because the reality is, even though I come off as someone who has it all together, I'm actually quite sensitive. And therefore, I don't have the luxury of being in situations that have already proven themselves to be toxic. I just mental health and happiness is an everyday struggle for all of us. I literally will forget people or situations that did not serve me. Like, flat out, eternal sunshine for the spotless mind. I don't feel like so far me spot cleaning all the bad has done anything, detrimental for me. We'll see.
Like most Black women, I would say that the women in my family are complicated. And the way that they cope is a mix of keeping their business to themselves, loving Jesus, but also privately reckoning. Once I went to see my grandmother and I walked in and she was crying and she was holding a Bible and she was praying, and I had never seen her in that stature. Like, she was a church lady. All my folks are church people. But she was in a deep private moment praying for herself and all the things she had been through. And it made it clear for me that the women in my family had deep interior lives, even if they didn't tell you everything that they were thinking about.
My grandmother, she was a person who kept up appearances. She physically kept up appearances, but also she had a different circle of friends who their children were doing well. And my grandmother had 2 children who were not doing well for very different reasons. And in Mississippi, respectability politics is huge. I think she was depressed a lot, but never talked about it because she just totally drowned herself in being a teacher and a mother and a grandmother, and her life was church and school and teaching.
When my grandfather passed away, I found out via text one of my friends was a nurse, and I was on the road. It was opening night for Lil Wayne and Nicki Minaj. And I saw this text, and I called my grandmother. I'm like, oh my God, stop playing. What happened? What's happening? She said, well, where are you? Aren't you backstage? Isn't it opening night for your show? I said, yeah. She said, you can't do anything about it. So finish your show and call me later. Period. Like we're not doing all this. You can cry later. That's one of the things my family does. That's our radical self-care. You got 24 hours, but then you got to pick it up and keep it moving.
You know, the culture of silence in most of our families, we don't discuss it, we don't talk about it. Even my trauma that is like public and people know about, we don't discuss it. While we didn't talk about it directly, I do think that the way that I was raised was integral to how I survived, because as unhealthy as it is, the other thing I learned from the women in my family is how to compartmentalize and move on, right? You learn that this is a thing, this happened, you pack it away, and that's not nobody else's business. You know, the sort of overarching motto in my family, particularly from my grandfather, is
It was after Katrina that my aunt couldn't get my grandmother to the hospital to get dialysis. She was a dialysis patient. You know, she just didn't really take care of herself. She was definitely overweight. She ended up having to get her legs amputated. And that was hard for us. You know, it's like we saw my grandmother like slowly decaying. She was like the matriarch of our family. And so what that meant was that my mama became the matriarch of our family before her time.
What's that, Mom? Okay, they gonna give me a truck. Really pissed. Your brother dropped my keys in the trunk.
She was stressed out. She overate. She didn't take care of herself. And then she subsequently took that out on me as her oldest child, as her daughter. I held a lot of resentment against my mother for that, because I felt like I saw her health begin to decline. I mean, her kidneys started to fail to the point where she had to get a kidney donated from my brother. I didn't understand at the time, but that was a lot of weight to carry as like a woman in her mid-30s, like something I couldn't even understand right now. And so there's a level of humanity that as a grown woman now, I see in my mama. And I think it's just now that I'm starting to realize that I come from a place of privilege, like to really talk about self-care. And a lot of times, all our mamas, all our grandmothers, our aunts, all they were trying to do was survive.
Okay, so we got, hold on, let me put my video back on. We got through a big portion of that. I didn't want to get into the next storytelling part because I wanted to make sure we had enough time to just kind of talk about what we observed, what we heard, what was interesting. Any comments you had? Let me remember where we were at. We are at 40.
I believe I watched that. About the grandmothers doesn't sound familiar. So was there more than one part?
No, I mean, it's not finished yet, but no, it's just this one.
Okay. Well, I know I saw some of it. I didn't have my grandmothers in my life. My dad's mother had passed, and my mother's mother passed early on in my life. I didn't really I barely remember talking to her on the phone. And I don't remember if I talked to my granddaddy on the phone. Maybe. But I was really young. So I had grandmama and grandmama adjacent, people in my life who were older, and yeah, one stands out as Miss Maggie, the tobacco chewing house always smelled like tobacco, chewed tobacco, but she could cook and she was sweet. She didn't play no games either, but she was quiet. So that's that grandmother figure. And then as I got older, I had a friend, and her grandmother was the kind that would pick up the possum in the road and go cook it.
Oh no. Oh my God.
Not in the road. Not a road, kid.
Oh my goodness. She liked the heads, the eyes. And I was like, But she was gun toting, knife carrying, cut you in a minute. You don't mess with her man, even if you had her granddaughter, because she thought my friend, her granddaughter was like trying to talk to her man. She was like, "I'll cut you. I love you, but I'll cut you." Like, yeah. So
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. The sister that had the all the jewelry.
yeah.
And how everything was important to her, had a story behind it, meant something. And in her leaving, somebody would come and just throw that stuff away. It would have no meaning, to them, and how we just we just don't know. Everybody's into whatever they're into, where with her, every little thing had a meaning and what it represented and where it was from and all of that kind of stuff. And then somewhere you can't take it with you, somebody comes and just say, oh, you can just throw it away. Just throw it away. Yeah. Mm.
I hope that didn't happen. That was a lot of cool stuff she had.
Yeah, I'm sure some things, somebody's more presently fashionable. They like bling bling and stuff like that, or and somebody would just whatever. I'm just saying how things mean different to each generation or each person in particular. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she really loved. She knew everything about how she picked it. It had to have some type of meaning for that. I heard you, Rev, talking about something.
Well, that is Alice Walker's book, In My Mother's Garden. That's the name of her book. But it also brought back, there's like, okay, so I love to read. I'm gonna go back and read all three of those books again. In My Mother's Garden, Song of Solomon, and Jambalaya. I've read them before in the very beginning of my journey, but it was like a reminder for me to go back and read them again. So I'm gonna go back and read all three of those again. But in the women telling the story, like I can hear my story in all their stories. Right, that was super powerful for me. I love the part about they cussed in my church. I was like, hey, in my church too. So that was a confirmation for me, right? Because I have to go, okay, I'm about to say something, and then I'll say the cuss word because people become offended. But now Holy Spirit is like, see, this church over here, they cussed at that church in the name of the Lord. Okay, so that's how I've gotten it from the ancestors. God didn't never tell me not to cuss. So what are you talking about? So, but just like the different stories. See, I was raised by women. All the women, my grandma, my mom. My mom was someone who was my mother, my best friend, my grandmama. She had that kind of wisdom. So, and the women around, the women around my mom, they all raised us. I was raised at a time if you did something at Miss Lolly house, she gonna take care of you and she gonna tell your mama and your mama gonna take. I was raised in that time.
Yep.
Right. And yeah, so a lot of it moved me mightily. Like I got some white people now that I'm dealing with a discourse in, because y'all don't know nothing about Black people. I'm gonna recommend this. Y'all need to go read this so y'all can really see who a Black woman really is, because you don't know. Right. And yeah, so it was super powerful for me. And I actually want to go back and take a deeper dive because I was raised in a generation of women and I was taught a girl code, and girl code is no longer in existence. Right. There's a way women were with women. And that's just like not there anymore. And it's a missing for me because that's how I was raised. So that's what I want to say.
Yeah.
Can you give me a few of the codes examples?
You don't mess with nobody, nobody's man.
That part.
Right. You definitely don't mess with nobody's husband. Right. You there was like a respect. If you couldn't, if what you said behind their back, you had to be woman enough to say it to their face.
Yep.
Right. Mostly how the girl codes show up for me is in action. So when they're on the court, you know what I mean? When I'm dealing with something, it's just like I find myself saying like, oh, they just don't have no girl code.
Uh-huh.
I mean, oh, you know, like girl code is like you can be brutally honest with each other.
Yes.
Like when something between you is not working, that
Mhm.
you can come and say, you know what, this don't work for me. And because you can have that kind of conversation, you can still remain friends. But that one sister who said, I once could erase you, like you wasn't there, I was raised with that too. I'm not gonna let how you being affect my whole world. So I was raised with that too.
Mhm.
Right. So yeah, so a lot of stuff in there is like those are the conversations I was raised with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That fighting each other.
Oh yeah, fighting each other. And it's just like
No,
too,
no.
how it's just like too, I have a lot of women around me. Who I am is I'm for you. If you around me and you doing my circle, I'm for you 100%. And you can count on me and you can trust me with that. But you don't know how many people go through my circle and they don't believe that they can count on me and trust me with their life. And that's the kind of women I was raised with. You could count on them. When my mama almost died, we didn't miss a beat. All the women came together. They cooked for my mama. They took care of us. They washed the clothes. They made sure that my mama didn't have to focus on nothing but getting better. And that's what I was raised with. And so it's missing for me that's not available. Yes.
Juanita? Thanks, Rev.
Yes, thank you all. Thank you, Lolly, for bringing this to us. It kind of represents us to me, and the value we have for each other. But what it did for me, it helped me to recognize the importance of intentionally carrying forward the values that I got from my great aunt, my grandmother, and my mother. And it also helped me to have more of an understanding of my relationship with my children and my grandchildren, and the importance of moving forward, being truly intentional about carrying forward the values that are going to benefit their lives for them going forward. So thank you so much, Laura. This is really, really beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. I often tell my son, you know, I want my grandchildren to know me. And there are things that only can come from me as their grandmother, as Sheila, you know, as what I'm doing and things like that. I said, I need them to know me. I need them to know me, you know. So that's right. I was very happy that somebody had filmed them way back. You know, some of those things were old, you know.
Oh yeah.
And somebody captured all that stuff. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And I apologize that I'm not on video. I'm significantly indisposed.
It is okay.
So did you post that, babe, so we can watch the rest of it?
I think I put it in the chat. If you have a Netflix account, that's where you can find it. It's called In Our Mother's Gardens. You'll be able to find it as soon as you get onto Netflix. And there's still about another 40 minutes left. So if you wanted to watch it then, you can. But I just really appreciate it. And the lady with the jewelry comes back later too, by the way. But I really appreciated it because I guess for me it gave validity to the variety that we have in our culture. I think so often we think of like Blackness and how we're supposed to be as this like this one thing that we gotta follow, and everybody has the same story, and it's like that's not the case. Everybody has, I mean, we have similar stories, we have similar traumas, we have similar celebrations, but we all have different backgrounds and a entirely different, not entirely, but different ancestors, different people who impacted our lives throughout, you know, our lives and their lives and everything. It's different stories. And so I really, really, really appreciated it because it just kind of opened my eyes even more to so many other people's stories. And I liked that I could see where I stand in my own story, in my own ancestry, and think about what is it that one I pull from my mom, from my grandmother, from all of them, and what do I newly carry along now? Like, what am I offering now? And I think it's really, I think I'm gonna be an interesting character in my future generations' lives. But I'm excited because this is gonna be great. Like I'm gonna be the woman on the front porch during the rain. You can be like, why is she sitting on the rain? I said, it's all right. It's a good thing. They gonna want to come to me. I'm gonna be the candy lady, the food lady. Just come to my house. We gonna talk about it. What's up? So, yes. So thank y'all for watching. I know Mama Evelyn said you gotta go. It is 10:02 now anyway, so we wrapping up anyway. But thank you, ladies, for watching. Let me know if you want to continue at any point. And yeah.
It was great, great, great. Thank you. I want to let everybody know that we're pretty far with the event. So Fridays, we will not be starting from 8 to 9 talking about the event because we're past certain things. And on Thursday, when we first start, we'll give a short report of where we are. And we only have 5 spots in the vendors left. So we should wrap that up this week. And we are off and running. So thank you for all of that. Like I said, no more Friday early mornings. We will just do it on Thursdays with the creativity, since we are creating a dynamite show, conference, shall I say. Okay. And that being said, if you don't have any special events that are coming up, we are going to go ahead and hug ourselves. So give yourself a big old hug and hug the world and sprinkle all the goodness and love and stuff on everybody. Peace out.
Love y'all.
And I do have flyers. We got the flyers in. Yay. You have to call me and come by and grab them.